The scorching California sun beat down mercilessly on Edwards Air Force Base as 23-year-old Jordan Blake stepped off the bus, her worn duffel bag slung over her shoulder and hope burning bright in her green eyes. She stood 5'4" tall with auburn, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing a faded t-shirt and patched jeans that told the story of her humble beginnings in rural Montana. In her pocket, she always carried her father's old silver watch, a Vietnam veteran's timepiece engraved with mysterious coordinates that seemed to shimmer in the light. Jordan had dreamed of becoming a fighter pilot since she was 7 years old, when her father had told her stories of soaring through clouds and defending freedom itself. Now, at Edwards, she was finally going to make those dreams reality. But the moment she entered the pilot training program, Jordan felt the temperature drop by 20 degrees. Captain Marcus Sterling, 29 years old and standing 6'2" tall, with perfectly groomed dark hair and chiseled features that belonged on recruitment posters, made it his personal mission to destroy her dreams. As the son of Brigadier General Richard Sterling, Marcus wore his privilege-like armor. His pressed uniform was adorned with a gleaming Rolex that cost more than Jordan's family, made in 6 months. "Well, well, well," Marcus announced loudly during Jordan's first day of flight simulation training, his voice carrying across the hangar to ensure maximum humiliation. "Look what the recruitment office dragged in. Can the poor girl even speak without stumbling over her words?" His cruel mimicry of Jordan's slight speech impediment, which only appeared when she was nervous or angry, sent ripples of laughter through the group of wealthy cadets who followed him like loyal servants. Among them was Victoria Cross, a rich socialite who lived for attention and saw Jordan's struggles as entertainment for her online following. Jordan's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her father's watch tighter. She had faced poverty, discrimination, and doubt her entire life, but nothing had prepared her for the systematic cruelty that was about to unfold. What she didn't know was that Marcus had already decided she would never make it past her first month, and he had the power to make that happen. The other cadets watched in uncomfortable silence as Marcus continued his verbal assault, but Jordan noticed one face in the crowd that didn't join the laughter. Alex Rivera, a 22-year-old cadet with sharp eyes and an even sharper sense of justice, was taking mental notes of everything happening. Alex's father had been drummed out of the Air Force years earlier by the same network of privileged officers, and the pattern was becoming all too familiar. As Jordan walked to her assigned simulator that first day, Marcus's voice followed her. "People like you will never belong in the sky, Blake. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone." But Jordan Blake had no intention of making anything easy for anyone, especially not for Marcus Sterling. The systematic persecution, the harassment escalated within days, but it was Marcus's calculated intelligence that made it truly dangerous. He didn't just humiliate Jordan publicly, he began systematically sabotaging her training in ways that would be nearly impossible to prove. During her second week, Jordan noticed her flight simulation scores were consistently lower than her actual performance warranted. When she tried to review the computer logs, she found that access required instructor approval that Marcus, as senior cadet, could easily manipulate through his father's connections. Having trouble keeping up Montana, Marcus would ask loudly whenever Jordan struggled with equipment that seemed to malfunction only when she used it. "Maybe you should consider a nice, safe desk job instead." The psychological warfare intensified when Victoria Cross began recording Jordan's training sessions, uploading edited clips to social media that made every stumble look like incompetence. The captions were cruel but carefully worded to avoid official disciplinary action when participation trophies meet reality, and some dreams are just too big for some people. But it was Alex Rivera who first noticed the pattern that would later prove crucial. During late-night study sessions, Alex began documenting the coincidences that seemed to plague Jordan's training: equipment failures during her sessions, scheduling, conflicts that isolated her from support groups, and sudden policy changes that always seemed to disadvantage her specifically. "This isn't random," Alex told Jordan one evening as they walked past the dormitories. "Marcus is playing a longer game than just public humiliation. He's building a case to have you dismissed, and he's doing it in a way that looks like legitimate performance issues." Jordan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert evening. What kind of case? The kind that gets you kicked out permanently and ensures you can never apply to any military aviation program again, Alex replied grimly. "My father faced something similar 20 years ago. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late to fight back." That night, Jordan called her mother Sarah in Montana, struggling to keep the desperation out of her voice. "Mom, what if I'm not good enough? What if I really don't belong here?" Sarah Blake's response carried the weight of generations of hard-working people who had faced impossible odds. "Honey, your father flew through enemy fire over Vietnam with nothing but his skills and his courage. That watch you carry belonged to a man who never gave up, even when everything seemed hopeless. Don't you dare give up now." But Jordan didn't know that Marcus was already planning the final blow that would end her military aviation career forever, and that it would come during the most important test of her training. The perfect trap. The third week brought Jordan's most critical evaluation, the hypoxia simulation test, designed to train pilots to recognize and respond to oxygen deprivation at high altitudes. It was a test that could make or break a pilot's career. And Marcus Sterling knew it was his perfect opportunity. Using his father's connections and his own technical knowledge, Marcus secretly accessed the simulation's oxygen regulation system the night before Jordan's test. He didn't disable it completely, that would be too obvious. Instead, he programmed subtle fluctuations that would create a hypoxic environment just severe enough to cause disorientation and confusion. Jordan strapped herself into the simulator cockpit that morning, focused and determined to prove her worth. She had studied hypoxia symptoms extensively and felt confident in her ability to recognize and respond to oxygen deprivation. What she couldn't prepare for was equipment that had been deliberately sabotaged. Within minutes, Jordan began experiencing symptoms that seemed too severe for the standard test parameters: confusion, dizziness, and loss of motor control. Her vision blurred as she struggled to maintain control of the simulated aircraft, her hands trembling as she reached for emergency procedures that seemed to slip from her memory like water through her fingers. The other cadets watched in fascination and horror as Jordan's performance deteriorated rapidly, unaware they were witnessing attempted sabotage rather than pilot failure. Victoria, ever opportunistic, pulled out her phone and began recording as Jordan's coordination collapsed entirely. "Stop the simulation!" Alex Rivera shouted from the observation deck, but Marcus quickly overruled the request. "She needs to learn to push through adversity," Marcus announced to the group, his voice carrying false concern. "Real pilots don't get to quit when things get difficult." Jordan's head struck the control panel area as she lost consciousness, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. The simulation continued for another 30 seconds before Marcus finally terminated it, timing the shutdown to appear like a reluctant safety decision rather than the conclusion of a deliberate attack. When Jordan regained consciousness in the base medical facility, Marcus stood in the doorway with a satisfied smirk playing across his lips. Her head throbbed with pain and dried blood caked her temple, but her green eyes burned with a determination that surprised even herself. "You think you've won?" she managed to whisper, her voice shaking from both physical trauma and emotional fury. Marcus's smile widened. "I think reality is finally setting in, Blake. Some people just aren't cut out for this kind of work." But Jordan gripped her father's watch tightly, and those watching swore they saw the hands spinning wildly, as if responding to the intensity of her emotion. "Tougher people than you have tried to break me, Sterling. I will prove that talent doesn't need money to validate it." What Jordan didn't know was that Marcus had already prepared the perfect frame-up that would eliminate her permanently from military aviation, and that the charges would be serious enough to destroy not just her career, but her freedom. The frame-up. Marcus Sterling understood that brute force would only take him so far. To permanently eliminate Jordan Blake from military aviation, he needed something that would destroy her credibility forever, accusations of sabotage that no one would be able to dispute. Using his father's extensive network and considerable financial resources, Marcus approached 3 technicians responsible for the flight simulation equipment. These were hard-working enlisted personnel who earned modest salaries and supported families on military pay, making them vulnerable to the kind of financial incentives Marcus could provide without even denting his trust fund. The plan was elegantly cruel. Marcus arranged for the simulation equipment to be deliberately damaged in a way that would appear to be sabotage, then ensured all evidence would point directly to Jordan. He paid the technicians $15,000 total to install faulty wiring that would cause cascading system failures worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in repair costs. More insidiously, Marcus used advanced AI software to create surveillance footage showing Jordan entering the restricted maintenance area at 2 a.m. The deepfake technology was so sophisticated that even expert analysis would struggle to detect the manipulation. He also planted Jordan's student ID card near the damaged equipment, supposedly dropped during her nighttime sabotage mission. But Alex Rivera had been watching Marcus more carefully than anyone realized. Using technical expertise inherited from an electronics engineer father, Alex began monitoring the financial accounts of the technicians involved in the maintenance operations. The discovery was damning. Bank deposits that far exceeded these, men's normal salaries, payments that coincided perfectly with the timing of the sabotage. "Jordan, you need to see this," Alex said urgently, showing printouts of the financial irregularities during a late-night meeting in the base library. "Marcus isn't just harassing you, he's building a case that could land you in federal prison." Jordan stared at the evidence, feeling the walls closing in around her. "Even if we know the truth, who's going to believe us against a general's son?" "We need more than suspicion," Alex replied grimly. "We need proof that will hold up in a military tribunal." But before they could gather more evidence, the trap was sprung. The next morning, military police arrested Jordan in front of her entire training class on charges of sabotage, destruction of military property, and conduct unbecoming. The damaged equipment was worth $847,000, making it a federal crime with potential prison time. As they led her away in handcuffs, Marcus Sterling watched from the observation deck with the satisfaction of someone who had just completed a masterpiece. In his mind, this was the end of Jordan Blake's military aspirations, forever. But Marcus had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated the loyalty of Jordan's allies and the investigative skills of people who had been trained to uncover truth in hostile environments. Fighting back, the military hearing that would determine Jordan's fate was conducted in a sterile conference room at Edwards, where 7 senior officers, 4 of whom had direct connections to the Sterling family, sat in judgment. Marcus presented his carefully orchestrated evidence with the confidence of someone who had planned every detail. The doctored security footage was damning. Jordan's ID card provided physical proof, and the financial damage created an atmosphere of serious consequence. When given the opportunity to defend herself, Jordan struggled initially with the nervous tension that stress always triggered. "I swear before the honor of my father," she began, her voice catching slightly. She paused, took a deep breath, and continued with growing strength. "I swear before this watch that belonged to him. I never sabotaged anything, but I understand that in this world, money and power always seem to triumph over truth." She placed the silver watch on the hearing table, where the mysterious coordinates engraved on its surface seemed to catch and reflect the harsh fluorescent lighting. The verdict was swift: immediate dismissal from the pilot training program, financial liability for the damages, and a permanent mark that would prevent her from ever serving as a military pilot. But as Jordan walked from Edwards Air Force Base to the bus station, Alex Rivera fell into step beside her, carrying her bag and offering silent solidarity. "This isn't over," Alex whispered as they embraced goodbye. "I'm going to keep digging until I find proof of what Marcus did to you." Instead of returning to Montana, Jordan made an impulsive decision that would change everything. She had heard about employment opportunities with civilian contractors in Nevada working on classified projects that officially didn't exist. The pay was decent, and it would keep her connected to aviation while she figured out her next move. Jordan found work with Apex Aviation Solutions, a company providing reconnaissance services for government agencies. She threw herself into unmanned flight operations with the same passion she had once reserved for piloting fighter jets. It felt like a consolation prize, but it kept her in the game. During her third week in Nevada, something extraordinary happened. Jordan was working late in the communications center when her father's watch began emitting a faint radio signal. At first, she thought exhaustion was playing tricks on her mind, but then the static resolved into words. "The coordinates on that watch," a voice said, startling Jordan completely. "They lead here, if you're brave enough to follow them." The voice carried decades of authority and experience. "Who are you?" Jordan whispered. "I'm the spirit of every pilot who was told they couldn't fly. The hidden truth." The voice identified itself only as Phantom, and over several cryptic radio conversations, Jordan learned that someone had been watching her progress at Edwards, monitoring her persecution by Marcus Sterling, and waiting for the right moment to make contact. Following the watch coordinates led Jordan to an abandoned ranch 20 miles outside town, where the desert landscape concealed one of the most sophisticated flight training facilities ever constructed. Beneath the surface, accessible through hidden entrances, the equipment that made Edwards simulators look like children's toys. For 2 weeks, Jordan trained under Phantom's remote supervision, learning to fly aircraft she had only seen in classified photographs. Her mysterious instructor pushed her to develop skills that went beyond technical proficiency, encouraging her to trust instincts and develop an intuitive connection with aircraft that separated great pilots from merely competent ones. The Crown Jewel was a flight simulator unlike anything Jordan had ever encountered, a perfect replica of the X-47 Shadowhawk, an aircraft so classified that fewer than a dozen people knew of its existence. "What you learn here," Phantom's voice crackled through the simulator's communication system, "will determine whether you're ready for the opportunity that's coming. The question isn't whether you can fly this aircraft. The question is whether you can handle the responsibility that comes with it." Meanwhile, Alex Rivera had been building an airtight case against Marcus Sterling. Using advanced forensics tools, Alex discovered the digital artifacts that proved Marcus's videos were sophisticated fabrications. More importantly, Alex traced the financial transactions used to fund the operation back to accounts controlled by Brigadier General Richard Sterling. The breakthrough came when investigative journalist Emma Rodriguez, who had initially been fed false information by Marcus, discovered the pattern of lies and manipulation. Her investigative instincts led her to question her sources more thoroughly, and she began uncovering the entire history of Marcus's persecution campaign. Rodriguez's follow-up reports exposed not just the current frame-up, but Marcus's systematic abuse of power, creating a public scandal that reached the highest levels of military command. The evidence was overwhelming: financial records, testimony from the bribed technicians, and digital forensics proving the surveillance footage had been fabricated. But the most significant development came when General Patricia Morrison, commanding officer of the most classified aircraft programs in the Air Force, made contact with Jordan through channels that even Phantom didn't fully understand. "Jordan, Blake," Morrison's voice crackled through the underground facility's communication system. "We need to talk." The ultimate test. The conversation that followed was conducted through radio while Jordan sat in the cockpit of the X-47 Shadowhawk simulator. General Morrison explained that the Shadowhawk program represented the next evolution in stealth aviation, incorporating advances that made previous aircraft look primitive. More importantly, it required pilots with capabilities that went beyond traditional training, individuals who could interface with advanced AI systems while maintaining human judgment under extreme stress. "What we're looking for," Morrison explained, "isn't just technical proficiency. We need pilots who can think independently, who can adapt to situations not covered in any manual, and who have been tested by adversity in ways that reveal true character." Your experience at Edwards, as unfortunate as it was, demonstrated exactly the kind of resilience we require. The revelation of Phantom's true identity completed the puzzle. Colonel David Phantom Hayes, officially retired but actually the original X-47 test pilot, had been waiting 30 years for a pilot with Jordan's natural abilities. The hidden facility was his creation, built to develop pilots who could push the boundaries of what was thought possible in military aviation. The training that followed was unlike anything in conventional aviation education. Jordan discovered she possessed an almost supernatural ability to merge her consciousness with the aircraft's AI, creating a pilot-machine interface that exceeded the system's design limits. Her father's watch became her primary navigation tool during exercises through electromagnetic anomalies that interfered with all conventional systems. The culmination was a test flight that pushed both pilot and aircraft to their absolute limits. Flying through an electromagnetic storm while maintaining radio silence, Jordan navigated using only the watch and her developing intuitive connection to the aircraft. For 45 minutes, she flew through conditions that would have destroyed conventional aircraft, emerging safely with performance that amazed even the engineers who designed the plane. In 3 decades of development, Phantom's voice carried genuine amazement. Nobody has ever flown the Shadowhawk through conditions like that and survived, let alone excelled. But even as Jordan proved her extraordinary abilities, events were unfolding that would provide her with an opportunity to demonstrate those skills on a much larger stage in front of the very people who had tried to destroy her dreams. Alex Rivera had secretly recorded Jordan performing impossible aerial maneuvers in a civilian drone, capturing flight control capabilities that bordered on supernatural. The footage showed Jordan anticipating and responding to flight conditions before they occurred, as if she possessed precognitive awareness of aerodynamic forces. Alex uploaded the video to General Morrison with a simple message: "The pilot you're looking for is still out there." Morrison's response was immediate. Within 24 hours, Jordan received official orders to report for evaluation as a potential candidate for an unnamed Special Operations Program. Soaring above it all, the Air Force Academy graduation ceremony dawned clear and perfect over Colorado Springs, with 15,000 spectators filling the grandstand. Among the VIP guests sat Sarah Blake, wearing her best dress and experiencing her first visit to a military installation, tears of pride already forming before the ceremony began. Marcus Sterling, now Major Sterling, with oak leaves gleaming on his shoulders, stood with his aerial demonstration team, confident that his final sabotage operation would prevent Jordan from ever reaching the cockpit of the X-47 Shadowhawk. He had installed interference devices in the aircraft's radio systems, planning to create communication failures that would force Jordan to abort her demonstration. Jordan emerged from the secure hangar wearing a flight suit with no rank insignia or name tags, her identity still classified. The X-47 Shadowhawk waiting on the tarmac was unlike any aircraft the spectators had ever seen. Its angular stealth, design and matte black surface seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As she walked toward her aircraft, Jordan carried her father's watch, its silver surface warm and its hands pointing steadily toward the sky that would soon become her domain. Marcus's sabotage created radio static that overwhelmed all communication. Attempts leaving Jordan isolated in the cockpit with no guidance except her skills and instincts. But the moment her wheels left the runway, 15,000 people fell silent as the Shadowhawk rose with a sound unlike any conventional aircraft, a deep harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate in listeners' chests. Jordan's demonstration redefined everyone's understanding of what was possible in military aviation. Flying at just 200 feet above the parade field, she guided the aircraft through a complex series of maneuvers that painted the image of a rising phoenix on radar screens throughout the region. The precision required exceeded the aircraft's theoretical capabilities, but Jordan's connection to the Shadowhawk systems allowed performance that impressed even its designers. The climax came when Jordan pulled into a vertical climb that took her from 200 feet to 20,000 feet in less than 30 seconds. The sonic boom rolled across the parade field like thunder from clear sky, and 15,000 people leaped to their feet in spontaneous applause that continued for nearly 5 minutes. The landing was performed in complete radio silence, using only visual references and her father's watch to guide the Shadowhawk to a perfect touchdown. As Jordan opened the cockpit canopy, she looked across the flight line to where Marcus Sterling stood with his demonstration team, his face pale with the realization that everything he had tried to accomplish had not only failed, but created the opportunity for Jordan's greatest triumph. General Morrison's presentation of the Distinguished Flying Cross took place before the assembled crowd, television cameras, and representatives of allied nations. Lieutenant Jordan Blake, Morrison announced, using Jordan's new rank for the first time in public, has demonstrated not only exceptional skill as a pilot, but the kind of character that represents the finest traditions of American military aviation. Jordan accepted the medal with quiet dignity, but her response carried the power of someone who had overcome systematic persecution to achieve something extraordinary. "I never needed anyone to believe in me," she said, her voice clear and strong, over the public address system, "but today, none of you will ever be able to forget what's possible when talent is given the opportunity to soar." She held up her father's watch, its silver surface gleaming in the Colorado sunshine, and the crowd's applause reached levels that threatened to overwhelm the sound system. The investigation that followed moved with unprecedented speed. Alex Rivera's forensic evidence, Emma Rodriguez's investigative journalism, and testimony from the bribed technicians created an overwhelming case against Marcus Sterling. He was stripped of his rank and faced court-martial, while his father was forced into early retirement. Marcus's new assignment was a logistics position at a remote weather station in Alaska, where he would spend the remainder of his career processing supply requisitions for equipment he would never be qualified to operate. 1 year later, Jordan established the David Hayes Memorial Scholarship Fund, providing opportunities for young people who had been rejected by traditional institutions but possessed unconventional talents. The program specifically targeted individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds who had demonstrated resilience in the face of systematic discrimination. Her father's watch now rests in the Air Force Academy Museum, accompanied by a plaque reading, "From those who had their dreams stolen to those who refused to let them stay buried." Visitors often report feeling unusual warmth when approaching the display, and several claim the watch's hands seem to move independently, as if responding to those who understand what it means to fight for dreams against impossible odds. Jordan. Blake continued flying the most classified missions in American military aviation, her identity remaining secret but her influence growing with each successful operation. She became the lead test pilot for aircraft that pushed the boundaries of possibility, ensuring American air superiority for decades to come. The underground facility in Nevada was expanded and transformed into the premier location for developing pilots with exceptional abilities, attracting candidates from around the world who had been overlooked by traditional programs but possessed the rare combination of skill and intuitive connection that modern warfare demanded. Sometimes the people who soar the highest are those who were once pushed down the lowest. They only need one opportunity to prove that the sky belongs to anyone brave enough to claim it. Jordan Blake's story serves as permanent proof that talent and determination can overcome even the most systematic persecution, and that the greatest achievements often come from those who have been underestimated by people who mistake privilege for ability. Have you ever had your dreams stolen? The sky is still waiting, and the only person who can decide whether you're qualified to fly is you. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world. Have you ever faced someone who tried to crush your dreams like Marcus tried to crush Jordan's? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might inspire someone else who's fighting their own battles right now. And remember, sometimes the people who tell you that you can't achieve something are just afraid that you'll prove them wrong. Keep flying, dreamers.